Hey guys, this is Community Starcraft. I am Sidewinder bringing you a community replay today. It's going to be between our red Protoss player booseek, and he's going to be fighting the blue Zerg, who's named Chacha, as we can see up here. And this is strange. Our Zerg player, Chacha, is not making any drones right off the bat, so we may be seeing some Zerg cheese upcoming. And I would expect him to drop a spawning pool. There we go. We're not going to be messing around in this game, apparently. So we're going to be seeing a 6 pool here from Chacha. Wow, very fast start. I don't even have time to say that we're going to be having a lot more community replays, a lot more build order stuff coming up. And yeah, I'm so thrown off by this 6 pool. We'll just go ahead and jump right into it. booseek really needs to get a wall up as soon as he can in order to hold this off. He is starting up with a pylon at his natural, which is going to indicate a forge fast expand, which is very normal on this map. So Zergs have a pretty good opportunity to abuse this forge fast expand with a 6 pool, which is what we're going to see from Chacha. Now booseek is going to catch wind of this, seeing the spawning pool basically done as soon as he enters the base. There we go, plop, it's done. There's going to be 3 pairs of Zerglings on the way, as we can see on the production tab, and booseek has got to be an all-out emergency panic mode right now. He needs to get his wall closed off as soon as possible, and I don't know where he's going with this probe, unless it's to just sit at the watchtower. Nope, he's going to go ahead and retreat it. Now this game, just really quickly, is from the Diamond/Platinum level. I do believe one player is in Diamond, one player is in Platinum, so one player probably trying to eke his way into a higher league. These 6 Zerglings are on the map, and this is a huge mistake from our Zerg player. He is running down to the wrong base. If he would known, and a quick tip here for all you guys, if you are on this map, your opponent cannot spawn in the direct across position, as we can see on the mini-map. They're either going to spawn on the close by air or close by ground position. So booseek got really fortunate with that mistake made by the Zerg player, and we'll see what these now 10 Zerglings are going to be able to do now that this cannon is basically going to be up by the time he gets there. And Chacha is rallying his Zerglings to this part of the base, but they're not going to be able to get in because they go to the closest point possible if there is a wall off. This cannon is up, and I would imagine is going to deflect these Zerglings. There they go. So you can see that if you're a Zerg player trying to cheese a Protoss player, and you need to learn the spawn locations, and you need to scout with your Overlord. This Overlord is way too late, obviously in the wrong position. On this map in particular, if you just sent your Overlord this way, it would arrive at their base basically at the time that you would need to choose whether you need to go to the top or the bottom base. So, yeah, huge mistake there by the Zerg player. But nevertheless, we will see what happens with this game. I did pick this up off of a thread on battle.net from a poster saying that it was a very cool, very intense game, so we'll see exactly what happens. Now booseek is going to respond to this by cannoning the natural of the Zerg player, which is a pretty good idea. I'd like to see another pylon like right here or another cannon right here, only because Zerglings could take this down pretty fast. But then again, now that it is finished, that's kind of all thrown out of the window, and Chacha's going to catch wind of this. As soon as he throws his hatchery up, he's going to start taking damage. And Chacha's economy is really bad right now. Still floating about 300 minerals. There's a second pylon going down here, which I'm not sure is totally necessary now that this cannon is finished. Zerglings can come down here and try to attack this, which is what we're going to see. So what he's trying to do is block off all the attack angles, but this cannon should still beat these Zerglings, even if that area was still open. Probe's coming in here to scout and see what's going on. He's not going to find a whole lot. There are 3 drones on the way, so Chacha's finally getting his economy going. Probably getting a little thrown off from his mistake at the early game and from not being able to expand where he wanted to. Now instead, he is going to throw his expansion down at the typical 3rd location for Zerg, which is a pretty good response. I mean, the way you're really going to have to deal with this cannon is with roaches, and if you're Zerg, you really need to get your economy rolling, especially if the Protoss player is showing this forge fast expand. But this Protoss player is actually not opting to throw his Nexus down for whatever reason. He would be totally fine throwing that down and not spending his money on these extra gateways. So, I don't know, maybe just playing around with builds now that he feels like he has an opportunity, or maybe he's just a little bit afraid to expand, but nevertheless, we'll see what happens. Back in the Zerg base, he is getting that Roach Warren down in order to get rid of this cannon. and possibly to put on a little pressure on his opponent. As we can see, only has one cannon, a zealot, a couple of sentries, which will buy some time, but ultimately if you have a large enough force of roaches, it will not hold it off very well. This probe is seeking around for a place to drop a cannon, and there he goes. Drops it down. Warp Gate Tech is about 70% done. +1 attack is also on the way. So this game is evolving from straight up cheese into a more of a macro game. We'll see exactly how both of these players decide to play this out. Now, one item of debate is sending your probes, or rather, these are obviously not probes, they're drones, sending your drones over to an expansion if you had to expand in a faraway place. You obviously do want to mine these extra mineral patches harder than you're mining your main, because you want your main mineral patches to last longer. So I'm not quite sure on the lost mining time whether it's worth it to transfer them over there. It obviously is in the long run, but you'd think that if you got this cannon down and put a hatchery down here, it would just be easier to transfer these drones over there. So I'll have to do a little bit of studying into that and see exactly what the right choice is there. Protoss player is finally dropping this Nexus. You can see it's a little bit past due. He is on 25 harvesters, but he is not putting out probes like he should be. He is halting probes quite a bit, and his Warp Gate Tech is done, so we now see his gateways transforming just as I say that. But ideally when you run this Forge Fast Expand build, even if you can close it off with buildings or whatever to prevent a 6-pool, well, a couple of issues about the 6-pool. Number one, we'll address what I was talking about first, and that is that with this Forge Fast Expand, you can probably throw down your Nexus on about 18, rather than whatever it was when he threw it down. It was like around 35. Wasn't really, paying that much attention to it. But nevertheless, when you hold off a 6-pool like that, your first response should be to throw up maybe 2 or 3 gateways and run some zealots in there and try to end the game right then. Only because the Zerg is going to be on 6 drones, and all they're really going to be able to do is put out Zerglings, which if you micro your zealots properly, are going to really destroy Zerglings. We do see 7 roaches popping here in the main. It's going to go down and likely take out this cannon so he can expand there. +1 armor is on the way for this Protoss player, which I don't really like +1 armor for Protoss against Zerg. I'd rather go for +2 attack and just get my Twilight Council down, especially considering Blinkstalkers are so good against Zerg. Basically a necessity against Zerg in the later game. As we see from this Protoss player, he's also not transferring out probes from his main. And right as I say that, of course, he does it, so maybe I will just stop noting these little things and wait for them to do them on their own. This Zerg is getting into more of a power drone mode, and we do see a Spire coming up from the Zerg player, so I don't know if he's opting to go for Mutalisks or for Corruptors to try and supplement his Roaches. It's interesting to see. There's also really no scouting going on from the Zerg player. He's completely in the dark, outside of a quick Overlord scout that flew in here. He doesn't see this extra gateway, or this gateway, or obviously the gateway going down right here, so Protoss player is going to be on 5 gateways very soon, unless there's one that I missed, which I don't think I did. Up comes the Twilight Council and the Robotics Facility, so this preemptive Spire may prove useful if this Protoss player decides to commit to Colossus Tech, which is what you see a lot in Protoss versus Zerg nowadays. He is continuing his probe production, which is good. This Zerg is putting out 5 Overlords at a time for some odd reason. I don't know if that was a misclick or if that was intentional, but for you Zerg players out there, you don't need to sink 500 minerals into all these Overlords, because your cap versus your max is going to be way different when you could be spending these all on drones right now, especially since he is floating these. I mean, he is keeping up pretty well on his injects with his queens. He is expanding here down to the 4th. I'd like to see him get his natural down as soon as possible, especially since he's floating all those minerals. This is kind of the time where you need to be checking on the Protoss player, seeing what's coming up, and either decide to drone or decide to put out army. He's deciding to put out army in the form of 8 Mutalisks, which we can see popping out right there. Should be a few more rallying here from the 3rd. And here comes +2 and Blink for this Protoss player. So this game has a really strange tempo to it. I don't know what he's going to be able to do with these mutas. Now, this mineral line is exposed. These mutas really need to get in there and take out these probes while there's no cannons back there, and while his army is not alerted. Here come a few units in order to try to deal with this Mutalisk harass, but just frankly, I don't know that that's going to be enough. But then again, there are these 4 Stalkers rallying here, so we should be okay. Again, really awkward tempo in this game. There are a couple of units pushing out for the Protoss player, and these Mutalisks are going to come and easily clean this up. These Zealots are in a lot of trouble, and the Mutalisks just decide to fly around and not do much. He does cancel the pylon, which is good. These Mutalisks should be able to easily clean up these guys, as well as this probe, which he does. There are a few Zerglings waiting down here to check the timing of the third, which isn't something that I see a lot of lower level Zerg players doing. Just produce a few auxiliary Zerglings, drop them at expansion points that your opponent is going to be taking, and if you get burrow, go ahead and burrow them because it will make them have to go out of their way in order to expand there. And you'll also know when they're expanding, which is the point of bringing these Zerglings down here. So a couple of other interesting tips in sort of the downtime during this game. There are a lot of cannons going up, which if those Mutalisks got on this mineral line, it would have been a lot different situation. Now these Mutalisks are essentially shut off from those mineral lines. So if you have this many Mutalisks in the air, get them on the mineral lines before you prompt them to put up cannons. If you did that well before, there would have been a ton of probes going down here. The recovery time would have been a little bit slow since he did rely on a warp in order to stop that. So you can see what your Mutalisks should be doing in ideal situations. Mutalisks come to poke in here, but they get pushed off by those cannons. Like we were saying, these Mutalisks are not going to do much against those cannons. And if you're the Protoss player at this point, you have to really be thinking of how you're going to deal with these Mutalisks. Stalkers are okay against them. You can see that their base damage is 12 now that he's on +2 attack, and that 12 will apply to these Mutalisks considering that their attributes do say light rather than armored. So this many Stalkers should fight off those Mutalisks, but if he decides to mix in something like Roach and Zergling to complement this, or even Banelings, I have a feeling that this Protoss player will have a pretty hard time holding that off. This Protoss player's body language is showing that he wants to set up here in the middle of the map. Also, this pylon is ghosting, showing that Mutalisks do come into the Protoss base while the Protoss army is out, and they're going to be taking out a lot of stuff. Meanwhile, the Protoss player is going to be trying to deny this third. He is moving in here, and this third is way exposed. These Mutalisks aren't able to fight this off, which is one downfall of going Mutalisks against Protoss, is that you just don't have the kind of beef that you need to deal with the Protoss army. Mutalisks come in on just a move command, and he's taking quite a bit of unnecessary damage. If he can unpower this wall really quickly, that would be nice, but he is focusing down the cannons. More Mutalisks are rallying here. Zerglings are taking down all the probes here in the Protoss main. Meanwhile, the third is gone for the Zerg. Protoss army is now falling back after taking out that third, declaring victory in that exchange, but the Protoss natural is now gone. This Protoss is only mining off of one base right now. Mutalisks are completely wrecking everything up, and this many Mutalisks in the sky is really frightening because they can take out these cannons easily, they can kill a whole bunch of workers, and this Protoss player really needs to spend his money and get some more units on the field in order to deal with this. As we can understand, it is very hectic in games like this in order to try to remember what you're supposed to be doing, but either way, you need to be able to have crisis management, and this Protoss player is kind of crumbling underneath the pressure right here. Protoss player might lose all of his workers if he's not careful. All the workers fall back, but the Blink Stalkers do recover, and yes, they do have Blink, even though we have seen it very limited, and there it goes. He does blink into that Mutalisk line and take out a couple, but you have to figure the damage was done. Zerg is now really moving in on the Protoss territory, expanding out the Protoss's third and fourth, and you'd have to think he'd probably be throwing this down as he does have drones distance mining from that third of his own. His natural hatch is now up. In terms of worker count, it is 34 to 23. The Zerg is ahead by just a little bit, but both of them lost one base worth of workers. If you're a Zerg right now, you're caught in a really awkward position because you have to decide to either try and drone behind this or try to keep the pressure on to keep his army in their base. More Mutalisks are rallying here. There's a ton of Mutalisks in the air. Take a look at it. There's 28 Mutalisks in the sky. Once you get about to that 30 mark is when you get to about critical mass, meaning that almost nothing from the Protoss is going to be able to beat that unless it's Archons or Storms or something like that. Another quick base trade here going on. Mutalisks are focusing down the main nexus. All these probes have hidden over to the natural expansion. And if these Mutalisks were more aware, and if this player did not see any mining going on here, he needs to get on the only mining Protoss base and really take this out. Protoss player is now in the main and is going to take down all the Zerg tech, as we can see behind his hatchery. Crazy base trade scenarios going on here. A bunch of overlords going down. The Zerg is going to be supply capped here in just a second. Protoss player already is supply capped because of how many pylons have been lost, and all the Protoss tech is going to go down soon too.